Hey everyone, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my research for this week's module. So I designed my filter with using only 5 cups, the first 4 containing any of the materials that were given to us. So cup 1 was the aluminum sulfate plus mesh. I'm not going to go over all the research that helped me design my filter in the way just because we don't have enough time. But the aluminum sulfate acts as the flocculant that is used to help coagulate any of the suspended particles in my dirty water. I realized this takes time, so I gave it about 15 minutes to allow anything to settle, and the mesh was used to catch that. Cup 2 is my humus layer, which contained my coffee filter and cheesecloth. Cup 3 was the soil layers, which was the wood shavings on top, and then I made a charcoal and sand mixture. Cup 4 contained fragmented rocks, which was basically just the gravel, to kind of replicate fragmented rocks and bedrock. And then hopefully cup 5 would be my filtered water. This is a picture or illustration of my design, and then here's another picture of what it looks like before I poured any of my dirty water through. So the filtering process, I had a dirty water mixture which was basically composed of water, leaves, soil, and a little bit of coffee grounds, and I poured that into my first cup containing the aluminum sulfate and the mesh net. After watching some of the videos from this week, I noticed that the aluminum sulfate seems like it needs to dissolve in order to stick to any of those suspended particles, so I stirred the aluminum sulfate with my water mixture for about 2 minutes, and then after about 15 minutes I removed the mesh net from my first cup, and with that came a lot of those solids that sunk from gravity. The less turbid water was then able to pass through into cup 2, which contained my cheesecloth and coffee filter. Similar to what the students said when they were designing their experiment, I did this in a way where they kind of were mimicking tree roots or plant roots systems to help absorb any of those nutrients from the water. Then the sand and charcoal mixture filtered the water by absorbing any organic compounds. Lastly, the water ran the quickest through the gravel layer because of all of the gaps and spaces that existed in that cup. So after doing this experiment, I would definitely redesign my filter and or run the water through multiple times in order to make it less turbid. Here's some pictures here. You can see before filtering the water, there was a lot of water in that cup, and you can see some of those solids. And then after running it, that darker color still exists, and I got less water than what I started with, so I can see that being a potential issue as well. So I would definitely do this experiment again and just redesign it, especially with students. To relate this to the science and engineering practices that we learned about, so the first quality of asking questions, I would rate this a level 4 because students are asked to explain groundwater infiltration and use evidence of how Earth filters water. For the second one, developing and using models, I think this is the biggest aspect of the SE&E practices because students are going through that designing process. They have to be creative but also rely back on what we observe in the natural world in order to create an effective filter. Number 3, planning and carrying out investigations. Once again, I would give this levels 3 and 4. Students had to design the filter, they had to gather data about what the best methods were, and if I were to do this in my classroom, I would have students go back and repeat this experiment multiple times after designing their filter for the first time to see what they can improve upon. Analyzing and interpreting data, this would be a level 2. Observational data was collected in the experiment, but I think in order for this to be effective, data analysis needs to be necessary to help students understand more of their data. Number 5, using mathematics and computational thinking. I think this is level 2. Some math was used, but not a lot. Constructing explanations, I would give this level 4, so students are tasked with explaining how certain layers of the earth filters water, similar to different materials used in the lab. So they're explaining what they're observing by relying back on the natural world. Engaging in argument from evidence, I would give this a level 3, and to kind of further that, I would say having students work in collaborative groups where they're using that argumentative language to support their claims of what would be the best method in designing their filter. And number 8, obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information. This would be levels 3 and 4. For students to understand why they're designing the filter the way in which they are, I think that they need to do a lot of research, and in doing so they would engage in a lot of text that helps support their design. Thank you for listening to my Module 3's Inquiry Lab video.